Hello and welcome to Newsnight. I am Ladi Akeredoluwale. Thanks for joining us. My guest on the program thinks Nigeria's security challenges are the result of many years of neglect of symptoms, and that a lack of capacity by the police, which is supposed to be in charge of internal security, means that the Nigerian military is stretched in many areas, but is nevertheless trying its best. Newsnight talks to the former Chief of Army Staff and immediate past Minister of the Interior, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazau. General Dambazau, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ladi.
Let me begin with of course, quite naturally, the thing everyone is talking about in the country today, the state of security or a lack thereof of security. What is your general impression of the country's state of security at this time, before we come to the specifics?
Well, generally, every country has its own challenges in terms of as it relates to security. And this is universal. By that, I mean it's all over the world. But of course, every nation too has its own concerns when it comes to security. And certainly, just like President Muhammadu Buhari expressed his feelings several times, and many other personalities have done so. And of course, the issue of insecurity is of concern to us because it has its own implications economically, socially, and politically.
Let me now come to some of the specifics. What do you think was the background to these challenges? What led us to this? Because as you pointed out, every country has had or has security challenges of varying levels. But over the last couple of years, ours seems to have spiked. So I'm interested, as someone who was Minister of Interior, and then, of course, before that, you were Chief of Army Staff, what do you think was the background to all of this?
I think it involves many factors. And first, issue of crime and criminality is part of human nature. So every country experiences that. And this is why, in the first place, we have laws to govern society. And even God himself, who created us in his infinite mercy, sent prophets, and along that side, he sent books, whether it's a Christian, the Bible, in the case of the Muslims, Quran, and many other faiths, in order to guide us, to guide our behavior. Like I said, there are so many factors involved.
I'll be interested in some of those factors, General. Please elaborate on some of those factors, please.
Some of those factors have to do with socioeconomic issues. Some of those have to do with governance. Some of those have to do with the environment itself, the impact of certain things happening within the environment. So, like I said, there are multi-factors. And I give you instances, for instance, the issue of our environment. Today we are talking about climate change, how it has impacted on the environment, leading to land degradation or environmental degradation, whereby it has resulted in forced immigration of farmers and herders themselves, moving from areas that have been degraded as a result of climate change to areas where they can have access to land and water in order to either farm or herd their cattle. But in doing so, because of the effect of what climate change has done, it has affected land and water resources, which are becoming scarce and smaller in size. In that case, you have conflicts over its use or their use or ownership. So this is one very good example. And also in terms of socioeconomic matters, we have issues of poverty, unemployment. Corruption also has a very serious impact in the environment. So these are some of the specific factors rather, that I think do contribute to some of the insecurity situations we have in the country. And also I want to mention the fact that globalization also has an impact. The world is becoming smaller, and things are done real time, just as we are talking now. While you are in Lagos, I'm here. So it gives a lot of opportunities for people with bad intentions to also take advantage of that, coupled with the fact that technology has so much improved. The other thing that has to do with socioeconomic factors is population. If you are aware of the fact that our population in the 60s after independence was just about 50 million. Today we are talking of a country of over 200 million. So that itself is a factor. Population is not an issue as long as the population is used as human capital to develop. So the resources are scarce while the population has grown exponentially. So these are factors that do contribute to the insecurity we are facing today.
Let's expand the discussion to include security generally, but first across the north. When all of this started, at least gaining prominence, we were talking in 2009 or thereabouts, yes, with Boko Haram in the northeast. But today, General, we have security challenges in the northwest with banditry and kidnapping, and in the north central with various, some people would say there are inter-ethnic clashes and some level of people trying to take over other people's lands and all of that. And then, of course, you have cattle rustling and all the other situations. Now, I know that this is something that you, both as Chief of Army Staff and Minister of the Interior, are familiar with. I don't know what kind of elucidation you can give us about what started off as strictly an insurgency in the Northeast has become this kind of existential threat, if you like, for the North, first of all.
Well, I want to correct an impression here because the issue of insecurity did not start from the Northeast. It has always been there. If you remember at what time in our history what we were dealing with in the 70s and the 80s and even 90s was the issue of armed robbery. I don't know if you remember the famous Oyenusi.
I do.
Particularly within the Southwest, and Anini and Co. So those were the scary issues at that time, armed robbery. And within that period, if you had gone into most of our prisons then, you find that most of the convicts and even those awaiting trial were alleged or convicted for armed robbery. And the government even had a situation whereby there was issue of public execution. And even while execution was taking place at the bar beach, somebody was robbing somebody of his car. If you remember that story very well.
I do.
So it's always been there. The challenges of insecurity have always been there. Specifically for the Northeast, the Northeast issue of insecurity, if you remember very well, started way back. with those young chaps who collected themselves and called themselves the Taliban, with reference to what was happening in, I think, in Afghanistan at that time. These were the same group, I think, that grew to become what it is today. But I want to say that this issue has even gone beyond, like you rightly pointed out, beyond the Northeast. It has spread in many parts of Nigeria, but even beyond that, has become a regional issue. In that it's an issue that has engulfed the whole of the Lake Chad Basin region. And it is an issue that also has connection with the Sahel region as a whole. If you know that there is the issue of G5 Sahel, which are a group of countries who are also showing concern about insurgency within the Sahel, and specifically in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger now. And so it's a regional issue as a whole. And even Benin, our neighbor, is getting some touch of it. So we initially people even some of those Lake Chad Basin countries did not show much concern about it. They thought it was Nigeria's problem. But until it came very much a reality that it was a regional problem, and all the countries led by President Muhammad Buhari in 2015, refocused attention on multinational joint task force, which is now based in Chad under the command of a Nigerian officer since it has been established. And of course, even Benin Republic, which is not a member of the Lake Chad Basin Authority Commission, is contributing towards that because it's also a threat to it. And I want to say that it's a threat to the whole of West Africa. Among the insurgents groups today that are very active is ISWAP, Islamic State for West African Province, which has the ambition, territorial ambition to engulf the whole of West Africa. So it has gone beyond Northeast, beyond northern Nigeria, beyond Nigeria itself. It's a regional issue and it's an African problem, African challenge, which I think we have to look at it from that angle, I'm afraid. And to be fair to President Muhammad Buhari, when he came in 2015, I think the first thing, if you can remember, was for him to pay a visit to all the neighboring countries, specifically because of this very challenge of insurgency. And following that, he organized a conference of heads of states of this same region, LCBC, here in Abuja, whereby this issue was discussed. In addition to that, the government of Nigeria also, gave lump sum amount of money for this project. And by the way, the multinational joint task force is heavily funded mostly by Nigeria because we have more interest to protect here. Don't forget our population, don't forget our size, don't forget our interest, particularly in that has to do with managing our borders and reinforcing it with security, which we have to do that alongside those neighbors. We have extensive land borders covering about 4,500 kilometers or thereabout. So it's a concern to us that we must be able to protect. It's a major challenge the population of over 200 million. So by and large, I believe that this is the issue. Even here in Nigeria, as at that time, you know, there were all kinds of narratives being sponsored here and there, and the people were not even taking the issue of Boko Haram that serious. They think, you know, part of the problem we have is ownership of the problem, national ownership. Because even at that time, there are people who looked at this issue as a Northeast problem. There are those who looked at it as a northern problem. But today, it has become a regional problem, not even Nigeria's problem. So there is a very wide network of insurgents that are connected with ISIS and so on and so forth. So these are issues that we need to look deeply and ensure that we nail it on the bud, because issue of insurgency, which is combined with religious extremism, which is combined with terrorism, whereby people, young chaps, children were sponsored and commit suicide bombing, killing people in various places. So we don't even talk about 2009. We take it way back, even during Obasanjo's time, if you remember very well. There was some attacks in Kano, and followed by that, there was a popular Islamic cleric, Sheikh Jafar Adam, who was murdered while leading prayers in the mosque in Kano. So this group young chaps had already established cells all over. So it wasn't just even as at that time, confined to the Northeast. Don't forget the fact that 2011, the bombing of the UN bombing and other places in Yanyan and so on around Abuja. So these are issues we've been dealing with, and I don't want us to continue to see it as a Northeast problem or as a Northern problem or West problem. It's a regional problem. It's an African problem, and we need to really wake up and be able to deal with it from that angle.
You referenced the fact that the role the president has played in bringing together the neighbors, and of course that brings up the role of the military, because you talked about the multinational joint task force now based in Chad. That brings us to the role of the Nigerian military in tackling these challenges. As one of the Nigerian military's veterans yourself, how would you say the military has performed, given the fact that many of these challenges are still with us, and sometimes we hear from the military itself that there are some challenges having to do, in some cases, with resources, in some cases with being stretched too thin. Some of the reports we have are that the Nigerian military is in 32 states of the Federation, and some of what they're doing in those states routinely should be the job of the Nigerian police, but they're there. And that speaks to the numbers. That also speaks to the issue of personnel and all of that. And then occasionally we hear about welfare issues and equipment. So take all of this together. How has the military done in this war against Nigeria's security threats?
Bearing in mind all these challenges you've mentioned, it's very glaring that the military is doing as much as it can to deal with the situation. And I also want to use this opportunity to appreciate my colleagues in the military, and particularly I want to appreciate those who gave up their lives for others to live. leaving behind them widows and orphans. No military person gets out of his house deployed to fight a battle with the intention that he wants to die. No, he wants to win the war and come back. But unfortunately, that is not always the case. So we need to give the military, standing ovation for what they have been doing as far as fighting insurgency is concerned. It's a big challenge. Americans just got out of Afghanistan after 20 years. They've been fighting war against terrorism since when? Almost more than 3 decades now. So with all the advancement, with all the technology, all the intelligence they have, they're still fighting it. Fighting non-state actors, ours the case. Unlike the Americans, theirs is not homegrown. They go outside the country to challenge the threat against them. But ours is homegrown. And to challenge non-state actors who are Nigerian citizens mostly, who live within the communities, is not an easy task for anybody. Secondly, you've mentioned the fact that the military is overstretched. Yes, the military is overstretched. What is the strength, the total strength of Army, Navy, Air Force? Just a little under 200,000. And not only are they occupied they engaged to fight this insurgency, they also are engaged to issues of routine policing duties within the country. And I think we need to look at our police as an institution and strengthen it in order to be able to handle those tasks, which is its primary responsibility, so that the military can concentrate on defending the sovereignty and territorial integrity of this country. And in doing that too, they have to be very conscious of issues of human rights, because those are issues other people also are waiting for them to make any mistake. So to go into fighting, people who are involved in terrorism or insurgencies, who are living within the country, who are Nigerians, who are within the communities, who are irregular non-state actors, is extremely difficult thing to do. And I believe that they're doing as much as they can, bearing in mind the circumstances. And of course, when you're talking of equipment, weapons and equipment, when the president said that he needed $1 billion to buy equipment, people were making all kinds of noise. When you look at the challenges, the security challenges in the country, $1 million, it isn't much for to cover their needs, requirements, to be able to carry out this task, their primary constitutional responsibilities and other challenges, insecurity challenges we have. So I believe that we must be able to appreciate the military. Of course, there are areas that one can say they can do better. But of course, if you look at it generally, I believe that they are doing as much as they can to carry out the task the Commander-in-Chief has given them. So this is my view on this as far as the military is concerned. Yes, there are issues that have to do with administrative problems. This is not unique to the military. is a general issue which, when you look at, the whole sectors in the country, we have challenges of accountability and transparency and rule of law in the system. Unless we look, and these are key ingredients in any democracy, and and these challenges are not unique to the military. Unless we are able to focus on these challenges, make sure that whatever we do, the process is transparent, the process is accountable, and the process follows rule of law, and of course human rights. So if we do that, I think it will not give much leverage for anybody to be able to take advantage of the system.
One of the things that you have mentioned, General, and which you yourself have had cause to be a bit critical about, has been interagency cooperation, particularly in intelligence gathering and the usage of that intelligence in the aftermath of its gathering. I remember that when you were speaking to one of the programs on this station, in the immediate aftermath of the attack, the terrorist attack on the Kuje Correctional Facility, you made a couple of statements that people said, yes, exactly, this is the nub of the problem, not just with reference to Kuje, but with a number of the other things that had happened even before Kuje. Kuje was just the most recent at the time. Before that, people had gone to the Owerri Correctional Facility, they had gone to Jos, they had gone to Akure, they had gone to several other places, amongst other targets. And in many of those instances, they had said, look, there was intelligence available that this thing was going to happen, or there was a probability that it was going to happen. But it seemed as if that intelligence didn't get to the right people, or if it got to those right people, they didn't get the right orders. So again, I want to ask you, in the context of what you've just said about how things could be done better, what is it that we are doing, that we need to do better in this regard with reference to this intelligence gathering and interagency collaboration amongst the security forces?
Yes, thank you, Ladi, for this. Yes, I mentioned that, you see, in this business of security, two things are very important. One, the security forces must have the capacity not only to monitor what is happening, but they must have the capacity to respond to an incident. And that capacity must be very quick, sharp, and to be able to, be useful to their action. If it is not quick and sharp, then it only lead to escalation. And this is why I made a comment. For instance, the train attack, for instance, the Kuje prisons, and there are so many other instances whereby these violent criminals will go into operation, spend a couple of hours in that operation, finish that operation, and disappear. So this is why I said there is need for us to look at the way we respond to emergencies. The way, the security agencies collaborate, cooperate among themselves. Because this is not a one-man's business. This is must be based on collective efforts. And if only a single agency alone will not be able to deal with such a situation, particularly this kind of insecurity we are facing today. So this is why it's important that the security agencies work together. They must share information or share intelligence. Their equipment must be interoperable. Interoperability of their equipment is a must. They must be able to speak to themselves using their equipment. They must be able to, assess the situation simultaneously so that they know who takes what action at what time. So it's very, very, very important. This is key for them: interagency, cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. I call them 3 C's. So this is very, very important for them to do that. And if they are not able to achieve that, then it becomes a problem.
Given that scenario that you've just painted, and I want you to look at it as a military man now, and from the security perspective, so many places have done 2 things in the last couple of months. The first is that there have been the creation of some regional security outfits. For example, in the Northeast, you have what is called today the civilian JTF. In the Southwest, you have what is called Amotekun. And then secondly, you have some people, including security experts, saying maybe the availability of defense weaponry should be slightly enlarged to include paramilitary organizations and even some civilian ones. What do you make of this, General Dambazau?
Well, that has its own advantages and disadvantages, but understandably well, it's more like a self-help. Communities come together to form vigilante in order to be able to cover the gaps that are left by officially recognized security forces. And that is what is happening. I say it has its advantages and disadvantages. I give you an example, Zamfara, for instance. Zamfara case has led to a kind of war between the Fulani herders group in the forest and the vigilante groups coming from the communities. And the Fulani groups accuse the vigilante of going into their communities, killing their people, rustling their cows, raping their women, and so on and so forth. I don't know how far that is true. But they use that as their excuse of going to the communities where they identify vigilantes or any member of the vigilantes. They use that to go into that community to carry out attacks or banditry attacks as they are known today, in order as a way of seeking revenge. So I think that kind of thing should be looked into. If, for instance, like the Southwest, that the formation of Amotekun, in order to be able to cover certain gaps, the civilian in the first place have a role to play, whether they are formed as vigilante or not. They should be able to provide information to security agencies. They should be able to, whatever they see happening that is wrong, be able to report it. But what we have today too on the other side of it, the flip side of it, is that we also have civilians who assist these violent criminals to do what they are doing, to survive on it. Some of them go to the extent of supplying them food in the forest. Some of them supply them medicines in the forest. Some of them supply them weapons and all kinds of things. That is done. But this should not be the case. This is a problem that is a threat to everyone. Sometimes too, you find that some of the people do it out of fear, because sometimes when a community feels that it doesn't get the protection it requires from the security forces, then they will rather, give in to the demands of these criminals. To the extent that they will go even and threaten, they collect taxes from them. And they make them, I saw a picture, I have not verified that, of some even using them, the captives, the victims, using them to farm, for farm labor on their own farms. And whatever products they get belongs to these criminals. So these are some of the issues. Now, on the issue of weapons to our paramilitary institutions have weapons. Immigration, they have weapons. They are, the act establishing them has allowed them to carry weapons. Likewise, the correctional service, they carry weapons. But the other issue is that they need more training on that. I'm afraid to say that for several years, this was my experience as Minister of Interior, which I made effort to correct. For several years, I met a situation whereby the training, there was weakness in training personnel in the paramilitary organizations. And this is why we gave a lot of attention to the training institutions to make sure that they are functioning. And also made it mandatory that before you move from one rank to another, you are required, and I just brought my military experience into that. You are required to go on certain courses, certain training. You don't just get promoted like that without going for those courses, being tested on those courses, and getting certified with good grades, which you now come to compete at the board with others before you are promoted. Before then, people just got promoted without attending those courses. So I've seen that in the files, but we've corrected that at least while I was there, and I believe my successor has continued with that. So these are some of the issues, and I think, but you cannot also allow everybody to carry weapons. Even the Americans are still grappling with the issue of gun control, because you find situations whereby people go into schools and start spreading children with killing them all over the place, or go into supermarket and start killing people, and so on and so forth. So America is still grappling with the issue of gun control. So to say that everybody should be allowed to carry weapons, I do not think, we've gotten to that, particularly issue of assault weapons. These are issues that I think we should be very, very, very careful about that. But vigilante has always been there. It's not new. We've had communities organizing vigilante since I grew up. I knew that. So it's not a new thing. But of course, the Southwest, for instance, has led as a region to look at it from a single window to create a Motekum that will be able to assist. This is how I see it, because they do not have constitutional mandate. So they are doing that to assist the law enforcement agencies. I've seen situations whereby when they make arrests, they hand over to law enforcement agencies.
You alluded to it when you spoke earlier about cooperation between countries. And I want to, again, use your experience as Interior Minister and, of course, as Chief of Army Staff to talk about Nigeria's border control. Because a number of these criminals, you mentioned ISWAP earlier in the interview, a number of them cross borders from Chad into Nigeria, from Niger into Nigeria. And so many people go back to 2011 when the late Colonel Gaddafi was killed in Libya, and the armory of Libya was broken into, and a lot of the weapons found themselves with non-state actors. And that a lot of these weapons have come into Nigeria through our borders. And that some of those who are perpetrating this insecurity challenges or giving us these security problems are in fact not Nigerians. There may be Nigerians, as you pointed out, but that there are some of them who are not Nigerians. What can you say about that in terms of the strength of our national borders in being able to curtail incursions such as this at this point?
Yes, you are quite right. Our border security management has some serious challenges. One, I mentioned earlier that we have a little over 4,500 kilometer borders, land borders. And of course, we have borders by the sea. So this is a challenge. Then, of course, there is absolutely no way we can physically man those borders. Within those borders, I believe, as at the time I was in office, there are about 84 officially recognized crossing areas. But there are over 1,000 illegal routes that people use. That is one issue. The second issue is that the closeness between countries bordering us. There is a border I visited whereby it's only a road that divided the community in Niger and the community in Nigeria. I visited Benin Republic upon their invitation on issues of this border. And I met the minister, my counterpart, the Minister of Interior in Benin Republic then. I think somebody, Mr. Akonde, apparently is a Yoruba man. And he told me that they have a very close cultural affinity with the Yoruba in one of the states. As a matter of fact, none of the traditional rulers will remain on the seat without visiting a particular shrine in Benin Republic. I can't remember the complete story, but it was something like that. If you look at Chad, you have Niger, we have Fulani and Kanuri speaking people, too, just like Benin with Yoruba speaking people. You look at Cameroon, northern Cameroon, we have Fulani speaking people and Hausa speaking people. Go to southern Cameroon, you cannot differentiate between people in, for instance, Akwa Ibom and Cross River with those of Southwest Cameroon. Even in terms of name, you have the sharing similar names. So there is that strong cultural affinity. That is the second issue, aside the expanse nature of the border itself. So even if you just look at those two, you know that we have these very challenges. So in order to deal with these challenges, we must work together with our neighbors. And interestingly too, you find that there's some of maybe because of population or whatever, or because of but you find that some of those neighbors are even more organized in terms of respect to rules, to laws. When you get in, you leave Nigeria, for instance, get into Niger. Immediately you get there, you see the way they organize themselves. They are not as rich as us. They are not as exposed as us. So there is need for us to come together to be able to work on that. Some of them, all our neighbors also depend on us for survival to a very large extent. And I was looking at sometimes back when they said the federal government has offered to buy some vehicles. I think, is it for Niger or Chad? I think for Niger. The people were making, that is soft power. We also get some of these aids from other countries. So they don't make noise about it, but they know why they give these aids. And we also know why we give such aids. So these are some of the issues. The Americans have 2 bases in Niger. They have a Department of Defense base, and they have a CIA base. All these bases are bases that they use for to carry out, to protect their interests. So we cannot also neglect that fact that we need to move very closely with the Americans and to be able to leverage on what they do there. Of course, they are there for their interest, but also we have our interest, and they are their interests that are mutual. Also, let's not forget the influence of France in that region and EU in that region. France has been conducting Operation Bakane in Mali for several years, even though recently they said they were withdrawing some of the troops. But France is a great influence to all our neighbors who are Francophone. We cannot distance ourselves from France because we have some interest to protect. And those interests too, and France too has interest to protect in Nigeria. So we should be able to have a bilateral relationship with these countries based on mutual interest.
General Dambazau, thank you so much for this interview opportunity and appointment. We're very grateful for the privilege to have you as our guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
That's our program today. We would, of course, like to hear from you on the conversation. Our social media handles are right there on your screen. You can also listen to this and previous episodes of the program via our podcast. Please visit our website, channelstv.com, to get started. I am Ladi Akeredoluale. Goodbye.